Welcome to Unknown Presence, the place where shadows watch, whispers follow, and every story chills you to the bone. Here, you'll hear true horror, tales from the woods, abandoned places, and things you'll wish you never saw. Stay with me, watch closely, and don't blink, because you never know what's hiding in the dark. I'm telling you this because I need someone to know what happened out there. The police didn't believe me. My friends think I had some kind of breakdown, but I know what I saw. I know what followed me through those woods. It started as the kind of trip we'd done 100 times before. Me, Jake, and Sarah, 3 experienced hikers, tackling a 4-day loop trail in the Cascade Range. We'd researched it for months. The weather was perfect. Early June, clear skies, no storm warnings. We even joked about how boring it would be compared to some of our other adventures. The trailhead was empty when we arrived. That wasn't unusual for a Wednesday morning, but something about it felt different. The wooden sign marking the trail entrance had been altered. Someone had carved deep scratches through the painted letters, and beneath the official trail name, fresh cuts spelled out something I couldn't quite make out. Jake laughed it off. Probably some bored teenagers, he said, adjusting his pack. Sarah wasn't smiling. Those cuts are fresh, really fresh. I ran my finger along one of the grooves. The wood was still sticky with sap. Hours old, maybe less. We started hiking anyway. The first few miles were beautiful, dense pine forest, the smell of earth and moss, birdsong echoing through the canopy. But around mile 4, the birdsong stopped. Just stopped. The forest went completely silent in a way that made my skin crawl. You guys noticed that? Sarah whispered. We all noticed. When you've spent enough time in the wilderness, you learn to read its moods. This wasn't natural. That's when we found the first cairn. Not on the trail, about 20 feet off to the side, partially hidden behind a Douglas fir. Someone had stacked stones into a waist-high tower, and on top, they'd placed a child's doll. Its face was turned toward the trail, watching. One of its eyes had been gouged out. What the hell? Jake approached it slowly. Don't touch it, I said. I don't know why I said that. Instinct, maybe. He didn't touch it, but he did take a photo. I wish he hadn't. We kept moving, but the unease settled into my chest like a stone. Every 100 yards or so, we'd spot another cairn, always just visible from the trail, always with something placed on top, a rusted knife, a circle of teeth, animal teeth, I told myself. A photograph so weathered I couldn't make out the faces. Someone's messing with hikers, Sarah said, but her voice wavered. It's just trail pranks. Trail pranks don't make the hair on your neck stand up. Trail pranks don't feel like a warning. By the time we reached our planned campsite, the sun was low. The clearing looked wrong. The fire ring had been disturbed recently. Ashes were still slightly warm when I checked. But there were no other campers. No tents. No gear. Just the remains of a fire that shouldn't have been there. Maybe we should push on to the next site, I suggested. Jake shook his head. It's getting dark. We set up here. We pitched our tents in silence. The woods were still quiet, no insects, no rustling, nothing. Just our breathing and the sound of nylon sliding against poles. I was boiling water for our freeze-dried dinners when Sarah grabbed my arm. There, she breathed, pointing into the darkening tree line. At first, I didn't see it. Then I did. A figure standing perfectly still about 50 yards out, just visible in the fading light. Human-shaped, but the proportions seemed off. Too tall, maybe, or too thin. Hey, Jake called out. You need help. The figure didn't move, didn't respond, just stood there watching. Jake started walking toward it. Jake, don't, I began, but he waved me off. He made it maybe 10 steps before the figure turned and walked away. Not quickly, just a normal walking pace, deeper into the woods. But the way it moved, it didn't push branches aside or step over logs. It just moved through the forest like the obstacles weren't there. Jake stopped. Even from behind, I could see the tension in his shoulders. That was weird, he said when he came back. Really weird. We ate dinner quickly, barely tasting the food. None of us wanted to admit how scared we were. As darkness fell completely, we built up the fire bigger than necessary. The flames felt like our only protection against whatever was out there in the black. Around 11, I was in my tent trying to sleep when I heard it. Footsteps, circling our campsite. Slow, deliberate footsteps that stopped every few seconds, then started again. I unzipped my tent just enough to peek out. Jake's tent was to my left, Sarah's to my right. The fire had burned down to coals, giving off barely enough light to see. But I could make out shapes moving in the darkness beyond the firelight. Multiple shapes, 3, maybe 4. They circled us in perfect synchronization, staying just outside the range of visibility. I wanted to scream, to wake the others, but my throat had closed up with fear. Then one of them stepped closer, into the dim red glow of the coals. It was wearing Jake's face. I don't mean it looked like Jake. I mean it was wearing something that looked like Jake's face, stretched over something else. The features were all wrong, eyes too far apart, mouth opening at an angle that wasn't quite human. I must have made a sound, because real Jake's tent unzipped. "What's going on?" he whispered. The thing with his face tilted its head at the sound of his voice. Then it smiled. The smile kept going, wider than any human smile should go. "Get in your tent," I hissed. "Get in your tent right now and don't come out." The shapes melted back into the darkness. We didn't sleep. All 3 of us stayed in our tents, listening to the footsteps that circled us until dawn. When first light finally came, we packed up in 10 minutes flat. Nobody talked about what we'd heard, what I'd seen. The trail should have led us back to the parking lot by late afternoon. But after 2 hours of hiking, we passed the same distinctive dead tree for the 3rd time. "We're going in circles," Sarah said, her voice tight with panic. "That's impossible." Jake pulled out his GPS. "We've been following the..." He stopped. The GPS showed us moving, but not on any trail. According to the device, we were walking through blank space, miles from where we should be. That's when I noticed the trees. Someone had carved marks into them. Fresh marks, leading off the trail in a direction we definitely shouldn't go. But behind us, I could hear them, following, getting closer. "We have to move," I said. We ran. I don't know for how long. The marked trees led us deeper and deeper into forest that felt increasingly wrong. The sunlight seemed dimmer, greener, like we were moving underwater. And the sounds behind us grew louder, not just footsteps now, but breathing. Wet, ragged breathing that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Sarah fell first. Her scream cut off abruptly, and when I turned back, she was gone. Just her backpack lying on the ground, surrounded by drag marks that led off into the undergrowth. Jake and I searched, screaming her name, but the forest swallowed our voices. Then Jake grabbed my shoulder. "Look." Ahead through the trees, I could see a structure. A cabin, old and leaning, its windows dark and empty. We shouldn't have gone toward it, but we did. The door was already open. The cabin smelled like rot and copper. Jake pushed the door wider with his hiking pole, neither of us willing to touch it with our bare hands. The hinges screamed in protest, and I felt my stomach clench at the sound. "Sarah," Jake called into the darkness. "Sarah." Nothing, just our voices echoing back at us from the interior. My headlamp beam cut through the gloom, illuminating a single room. Dirt floor. Wooden walls covered in more of those carved symbols we'd seen on the trees. And photographs, dozens of them pinned directly into the wood with rusty nails. Hikers, all of them hikers, posed at trailheads, smiling at cameras. I recognized some of the locations, trails we'd researched, places we'd talked about visiting. "Jesus Christ," Jake whispered. Are these missing persons?" I stepped closer to one photo. A young couple, arms around each other, mountains behind them. Someone had drawn a red X through their faces. The date on the bottom, 2 years ago. I remembered hearing about them. They'd never come back from a hiking trip in this range. Then I saw our photograph. It was us, from this morning, at the trailhead. All 3 of us smiling, adjusting our packs. The photo I knew for a fact Jake had only taken on his phone, which was currently in his pocket. "Jake," I said slowly, "did you print any photos before we left?" "No, why would I?" He saw where I was looking. The color drained from his face. In the photo on the wall, someone had drawn a red X through Sarah's face. Jake's face had been scratched out entirely, the paper shredded. My face was still untouched. Beneath the photo, written in what looked like dried blood, "Witness." A sound came from outside. A long, drawn-out scraping, like something being dragged through leaves. We moved to the window. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold my flashlight steady. Sarah was being pulled across the clearing toward the cabin. Not dragged, pulled upright, her toes scraping the ground, arms hanging limp at her sides. But nothing was pulling her. She just moved across the space, suspended by something invisible, her head lolling back, eyes wide open and staring at the sky. Behind her, they emerged from the tree line, 4 figures, walking in perfect unison. In the beam of my flashlight, I could see their faces clearly now. They were wearing masks, human skin masks, stretched and stitched together from different faces. But underneath, pressing against the skin, something moved. Something that wasn't human tried to fit itself into a human shape and failed. The tallest one wore Jake's face, the real Jake's face, somehow copied perfectly. It raised one hand and waved at us. The gesture was friendly, cheerful, completely wrong. "We need to go," I said. "Right now. Back door, move." There was no back door. The cabin had 4 walls. I'd seen it from outside. But inside, there were only 3 walls and the entrance. The 4th wall, where there should have been wood and possibly a window, was just forest. As if the cabin had been sliced open and the wilderness poured in. Trees grew where the wall should be, their roots breaking through the floor. "This isn't possible," Jake said. He was crying. I'd never seen him cry before. The front door swung fully open. They didn't enter. They just stood in the doorway, their heads tilted at identical angles, watching us. Sarah hung suspended between them, and I could see now that she was breathing. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her eyes tracking back and forth in terror. But she couldn't move, couldn't speak. The one wearing Jake's face spoke. The voice came from somewhere inside it, bubbling up through the stolen skin. "You can leave," it said. The words were in Jake's voice, but the rhythm was all wrong. "One can leave. Witness. Tell them we're here. Tell them we're waiting." Jake grabbed my arm. "What does it want?" "One leaves," the thing repeated. "One stays. One watches choose." I looked at Sarah. Her eyes found mine, and in them, I saw an understanding. A terrible, horrible understanding. "I'm not leaving either of you," I said. The things in the doorway laughed. It wasn't a human sound. It was wind through hollow trees, the creaking of branches, the sound of something dying in the dark. "Then I'll stay," it said. "But first you run. We like when they run." They stepped back from the doorway, creating a path, an invitation. Jake looked at me. "On 3. I nodded. 1. Sarah's eyes were screaming at us. 2. I gripped my hiking pole like a weapon, knowing it would be useless. 3. We ran, not toward the door, toward that impossible 4th wall where forest met cabin floor. We crashed through undergrowth that shouldn't exist, branches tearing at our clothes and skin. Behind us, I could hear them following, not rushing, not hurrying, just following at that same steady pace because they knew something we didn't. We couldn't escape. The forest had changed. every direction we ran, we found ourselves back at the cabin. Different sides, different angles, but always the cabin. And they were always there, waiting, watching. Sometimes far away, sometimes close enough to touch. Jake tried to fight one. He swung his hiking pole at the thing wearing his face. The pole passed through it like smoke, and the thing grabbed him. I heard his scream cut off into a wet gurgle, and then he was one of them, walking with their same strange gait, his real face looking at me from underneath, a mask that was forming even as I watched. I ran again. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I don't know how long, hours, days. Time felt broken in those woods. Eventually, I found myself on a trail. A real trail with markers and everything. The sun was rising, or maybe setting. I couldn't tell anymore. I followed it, expecting at any moment to end up back at the cabin. But I didn't. The trail led me out, to a parking lot. My car was there, covered in a week's worth of dust and pine needles. A week. We'd only been gone one night. I drove to the police station, told them everything. They found our campsite easily enough, found Jake's and Sarah's phones, their gear, but no bodies, no cabin, no trace of them at all. The official report says they're still missing, that I probably had a psychotic break and imagined the whole thing. They're still searching, but in the wrong places, on the mapped trails, in the normal forest. I'm back home now, back to my normal life. But 3 days ago, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It's me, from behind, walking down my street. This morning. I know it was this morning because I'm wearing the jacket I put on just a few hours ago. Written on the back, "Witness, tell them." So I'm telling you. I'm telling everyone who will listen. Don't hike the Cascade Range trails in early June. Don't follow the marked trees if you get lost. Don't trust the cabins you find in the deep woods. And if you see people who look almost right, but move just wrong, run. But here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. The thing that keeps me up at night. When I got to my car that morning, my hiking boots were clean. No mud, no dirt, like I'd never left the parking lot at all. Last night, I found fresh dirt on my bedroom floor, in the pattern of footprints, leading from my bed to the window. They're not in the woods anymore. I think they followed me home. I can hear something outside my door right now, scratching, breathing, waiting. The doorknob just started to turn.